So what does 4 years do to a flagship smartphone? Today we revisit the Samsung Galaxy S5, and I didn't just make this video randomly. This video actually came because I was reading an article the other day talking about how, a lot of people are holding on to their older Samsungs, the Note 4, the Galaxy S5, because of the functionality of removing that battery. It's a feature that I think we last seen in maybe like the LG V20. And Samsung went away with this, and this is one of their staple features. But, there was a lot of pressure on Samsung to go away from these cheaper builds. The iPhone 6 in this year too, in 2014, had this aluminum, build, and Samsung really was falling behind when it comes to that premium feel in a smartphone. They had all the guts, the internals, but they didn't have the body of a premium smartphone. But has that changed? The substantial evolution of the Samsung, the evolution of the Samsung has been incredible. I mean, it's so much different to use a Samsung in 2018 versus a Samsung from 2014, whereas I would argue that, the iPhone series is not that much different even 4 years later. So I like where, Samsung has gone with their devices. However, some people like that uniformity, they like that consistency from, older iPhones, but I digress. We're going on a tangent there. We're back to the S5. The functionality of this phone, you have that removable battery. So if we go and pop off the back here, can't even remember where it was. It was sealed in, waterproof. You can remove this whenever you needed battery capacity. Also micro SD card expansion, that came back. But really the big deal was the battery. You carry multiple batteries with you wherever you went. And I know some people are going to say, well, you can just buy one of those external battery packs these days. Why does this even matter? Like, that doesn't even matter. Well, to some people, it does matter because there's nothing like taking a battery and just putting a 100% charged battery back in a phone. So I beg the question to you guys, do you think that Samsung should bring back a phone, even if it's not a flagship level device like the Galaxy S8 Plus, the S9 Plus, for example? Should they bring a phone that offers all of this but with like flagship specs and like maybe like one of those Pixel 2, like kind of like really premium feeling plastic feel designs maybe, and bring back some of that functionality from the past? Would you like to see that at least as an option alongside the more premium glass feeling design? Because all Android phones this year are basically glass backs. They're fragile. You need to have cases on them, screen protectors on them, because if you drop them, they're easy to crack, much easier than this older device. Even here on the front of the Galaxy, it seems like it has like a little slight more durability along the side. Like the glass, you see how it's just slightly below this little edge. So I feel like if you drop a Galaxy S5 on the corners, you're going to drop and nick the corners before you hit that display. Like there, for example, this is a drop, and you see how it nicked the corner. Now, if you take a look at one of the new curved panels on the Galaxy, if you hit that corner, that's going to shatter, down this way. So like on a corner, it'll shatter. So, this is much more likely to shatter with a drop than before. So that really, proves what I'm trying to say about the durability. Now, in terms of its design 4 years later, this is one of the things I didn't like the most about the S5. That's been gone for a long time, but that door was one of the most annoying charging things in history of smartphones that I've ever seen. But luckily or happily, that thing is gone now. Design overall, it doesn't look very appealing to me even here 4 years later, but at the same time, it still had a comfortable feel in the hand. It was curved a little bit in the edges, a little bit curved, tapered down there. So it was comfortable, but it was more functional than, a sexy phone. I never felt like this was a sexy phone when using it. I just felt like it's a really good phone that just does a lot for the day-to-day use factor. Now, talking about that display, this display actually holds up incredibly well in 2018. OLED display here, Super AMOLED actually, HD, and it's been fantastic. It's still a really good display. It even has most of the features you're going to find in the newer devices, like the ability to adapt that display. Let's hit OK here. Dynamic, standard, professional, and cinema modes. And then they even have the ability to, put on the smart stay. You have daydream here. There's a bunch of stuff adjusting the screen tone. There's a bunch of stuff that's in here that you're not able to get on Android phones until a couple of years ago. So this has been around Samsung devices for a long time. So the display here, 1080p on a 5.1 inch here. So this is definitely easily usable in 2018 and easily can, stand toe to toe with a lot of the later displays. Yes, they're better calibrated. This one's a little bit oversaturated. They've really toned that down a little bit. But at the same time, this is a really fantastic display, even 4 years later. Revisiting the software, here's where I have a big problem with the Galaxy S5. Now, if you're using a Galaxy S5, you might have noticed that you're not really getting software updates anymore. Now, this might not matter to everybody because not everybody cares about software updates, but a lot of people do. And this phone, what I didn't like about the S5 is it was just so cluttered. Like, it was really hard to find settings. There were just so many of them that I would just get aggravated just scrolling through here. They really cleaned it up with the newer phones, but here it was just all over the place, just so much stuff going on here. As you can see, just lists and lists upon list upon list of software and all kinds of stuff going on. So Android 6.0.1 Marshmallow, no updates to Oreo here on the Galaxy S5 unless you go ahead and root it and try to install a custom ROM. I'm talking straight from the manufacturers. You're not going to get many more updates at all here to this device, but surprisingly, if you have an Apple iPhone, you still get an update on a 2014 iPhone 6. However, that phone doesn't run that well at all, and I think that the S5 still feels a little faster than the iPhone 6, even though it's running an older version. I mean, it just doesn't feel quite as laggy as an iPhone 6 right now. Software updates really just crush this phone right here. Now, when it comes to that performance though, we talked about it a little bit. This does have a Snapdragon 801 CPU, 2.46 gigahertz quad core. And like I say, it's pretty fast, 2 gigs of RAM, but it doesn't do RAM management that well. But I think that most people could still get their basic tasks done here for a Galaxy S5 in 2018. So I don't want to talk too much about the performance. Using one of these in 2018, it feels like more like a mid-ranger, like a lower end mid-ranger in terms of the performance, but surprisingly, it's still useful. I think that it lags up when you have multiple applications loaded up on the home screen, or if you have a lot of apps open at once, this will free up the Galaxy S5, but at the same time, if you're just running a few apps here and there, it actually has pretty good performance. You could use it day to day, no problem. Like I can go on Instagram here and I could still easily go into my pages and everything just runs pretty smooth. So you can see, not bad for a 4-year-old phone. And this kind of shows how long phones really do last, specifically flagship phones. Talking about the battery life, we talked about how you could remove it, obviously, but going into the battery section, this phone actually drains significantly faster than a lot of the phones. So while you do have that functionality that I do think they should bring back, maybe and offer it as a side option, with one of the newer, nicer, longer lasting batteries, the Galaxy S5, you can just get multiple batteries, charge them up, and you can easily go through a day with no worries whatsoever. But the newer phones are just such better optimized that, they last almost as long as 2 batteries would last on a Galaxy S5. So that kind of makes up for it, but at the same time, it's still pretty nice to have that option to go ahead and swap them out. So again, your thoughts on the battery swapping? Would you like to see that in a newer, more modern Samsung device? 4 years later, the camera is just not something I would recommend on using this phone. Now, not because it doesn't take pretty good photos, it does. I'm going to show you a couple of examples here with the device. So I took a few photos, and in good lighting, it's really hard to kind of tell the difference between these photos and 2018 photos. Cameras on smartphones have been good for quite some time, but where this phone really falls apart is when you get to the low light. The noise is just incredible here on the Galaxy S5. So noise reduction and low light abilities is where Samsung has really took their phones to the next level. Also, the ability to focus much faster on your device. That's where you really have improved. But in terms of the day-to-day, really bright light photos, you don't see too much of a difference. Just a little bit more noise reduction in 2018 and much better focusing. So they're much more usable cameras, and they're much more, you just want to use them more to just pull out and take pictures of everything. Whereas with the S5, sometimes that focus will hunt too much, and that front-facing camera is just atrocious on this phone. It's really soft, very noisy, and it doesn't really, it's not that usable to me in 2018. So I wouldn't even mess with the front camera on the Galaxy S5 here in 2018. And lastly, the audio quality. This is an area, again, where phones in general have gotten so much better. Let's go to Nick Ackerman channel right here and take a look at one of my latest videos. This phone actually had the speaker on the rear. So right here, it was easy to cover that up. So, I mean, you could definitely watch a video, no problem. but this feels very tinny, very weak. If you were to, you know, upgrade to pretty much any newer phone, you'd be so much happier with that. So really all this device has going for here 4 years later is just its functionality to take that back off and put a battery in. Other than that, all Samsung devices from 2018 have improved on this in almost every way, shape, and form. The fingerprint scanner on some of them at the top people don't like, but they're still better, faster fingerprint scanners on the newer device. So anyway, overall, I think after 4 years, the Galaxy S5 is definitely a usable phone, but it's definitely one I wouldn't recommend anybody use, like go buy it right now. But if you still have one, what are your thoughts? Do you still enjoy it? Do you want to see a Samsung bring this style back? Have you been holding on just because you don't like this, you know, whole all glass design thing? Let us know down below in the comment section of this video. Find this video helpful, entertaining, informing, enjoyable. Do me a favor, click that like button for me. And if you're new here, consider subscribing for more. Nick here helping you to master your technology. Be sure to be well and peace.